Hey guys, tonight, we're stepping into a time when sunset didn't mean rest, it meant risk. The torches are flickering out, the roads are emptying, and you're standing in a village where the dark is more than just a lack of light. You hear the last bleat of a goat being herded into its pen, the dull thud of wooden shutters closing, and then nothing. The silence stretches. You glance up. The stars are clear cold and distant, and you know that whatever safety the daylight offered is now gone. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time. I'm always curious where and when you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through muddy cobblestones in the fading light, the soles of your shoes slick and uncertain. Around you, cottages blink out one by one, their windows extinguished with quick puffs of breath and the soft scratch of flint on steel. Everyone moves with quiet purpose. Doors shut with finality, and bolts slide home. The village moments ago bustling with voices and clattering pans is descending into a hush, an unspoken pact to survive the night. Because in the medieval world, nightfall doesn't just mean darkness. It means demons might slither in. Spirits might rise. Wolves, actual wolves, might prowl the edge of the thatch. And that's just the physical threats. The mental ones, the ones born of whispers and old wives' tales, are worse. You carry them like invisible weights. Everyone does. You see, there are no street lamps here, no flashlight in your pocket, just a candle stub if you're lucky, and the constant sense that something is following you just beyond the reach of its trembling flame. And while today's historians argue whether fear of the night was more rooted in folklore or fact for people like you living in the 13th or 14th century, it makes no difference. The night feels alive. That's enough. You pass an old man crouched by the communal well, muttering a prayer. Is it to a saint or to something older and darker? No one asks. Everyone respects fear when it walks in daylight. The village is arranged in tight clusters, houses huddled together like sheep. This isn't by accident. It's defense against animals, against raiders, and most importantly, against what the dark brings. The closer the houses, the more windows you can watch from, the more voices you might hear if something goes wrong. You finally reach your door. It creaks as you close it behind you, and you feel a slight relief when the heavy wooden latch thunks into place. You lean against it for a moment, heart slowing, but only a little. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of peat smoke and turnips. Your family is gathered around the fire faces, soft in the glow, but even here, even among loved ones, no one quite relaxes yet. Above the hearth hangs a cross worn smooth by generations of fingers. Beside it, dried herbs, yarrow mugwort, maybe a sprig of something you can't name. Not all these things are Christian, but they all work supposedly. That's what your grandmother says, and she's seen things. You settle onto the bench. It's splintery and cold, but familiar. The baby is already asleep in her mother's arms. Your father hums something low, half song, half prayer, as he checks the shutter locks again. Not once, twice, 3 times. Someone stirs the fire. Sparks leap like startled fairies before vanishing into the flue, Outside, a dog barks once sharply. Everyone freezes. Then silence. You exchange glances. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was something passing through. The kind of something that doesn't need to knock. You reach for your candle and light it with shaking fingers. Beeswax, real beeswax. A luxury, but your father trades well. Most folks settle for tallow, which smells like death warmed over and burns like regret. This at least smells like honey and hope. The flame dances. It bends and bows, and you watch it closely, because there's a belief your aunt swears by it that if the flame flickers too suddenly, it means a spirit just passed by. And tonight it flickers. But hey, it could also be a draft, or your breath, or the fact that you left the chimney flue cracked. That's the thing about fear, it never fully explains itself. It just hangs around like mildew dampening everything. You think back to what the priest said last Sunday about evil walking after sundown. He meant sin, probably, lust, theft, gambling. But you're pretty sure he also meant something else, something with claws. You pull your blanket tighter and try not to listen to the wind scratching across the roof. The thatch is thick, but it's old, and your friend Robert swears something with wings nested there once. A bat, maybe, or a demon bird, or in his more dramatic moods, an actual soul harvester sent from hell. You laughed when he said it, but tonight you're not laughing. That's how the night works here. It makes everything feel closer. The trees beyond the field line look like fingers. The sound of your own stomach growling sounds like it came from someone else in the room. Shadows move where no one's standing. It's probably just your imagination. But if it isn't, what then? Your grandmother says there's safety in patterns. So you go through your rituals. You rub the cross hanging from your neck. You whisper a line from Psalm 91. You glance at the fire and make sure it hasn't turned blue, because blue flames mean spirits, obviously. You lie down, eventually blanket scratchy against your chin. The fire dies lower. Your eyes flutter closed, but your ears stay open. Always. The first thing you notice when you wake up, if you even slept, is the silence. Not the comforting hush of modern nights, padded with humming appliances and distant traffic. No, this is the kind of silence that leans in too close. A silence so thick, you're afraid to break it with breath. And outside, the dark still clings to the walls like moss. You didn't make it to second sleep yet. That's what folks call the hours just before dawn, after the long, nerve-wracking first stretch of rest. If you're lucky, you'll wake around midnight, tend the fire, maybe whisper a few prayers, and then slip back into sleep before the cocks crow. But tonight, that moment hasn't come. Instead, you hear your father's boots thudding softly across the packed earth floor. He's already up. Not because he wants to be, because he has to be. He's the village's designated night watch this week, and that means braving the outside with nothing but a lantern and a spiked staff. You sit up, blanket falling off your shoulders, and watch him shrug on his worn wool cloak. It's dark green, trimmed with fur at the collar, and it smells like smoke and old sweat. He grabs the iron key hanging by the door and takes a long breath. "Don't open it too wide," your mother whispers. "Let the heat stay in and the other stuff out." He nods and cracks the door. The cold rushes in sharp and immediate. So does something else, an unease that slithers down your spine. You don't like him going out there. No one does. But someone has to patrol. Someone always has to be the one who makes sure nothing is creeping closer. The village has no organized police, no real guards, just volunteers rotating weekly who try to keep the peace and make sure the livestock haven't sprouted extra eyes in the night. Yes, that's an actual fear. Ask old Greta. So he steps outside, lantern held high, its glow barely touching the mud beneath his boots, and you're left inside staring at the door as it thuds shut again. One bolt, then another, then the scrape of wood across wood. Your mother returns to bed without a word. She doesn't need to explain the knot in her stomach. It's the same one in yours. Night watchmen don't just look for thieves or wolves. They listen for whispers. They watch for flickering lights in places that should be dark. They keep track of which doors open when they shouldn't and which roofs seem to breathe when the wind is still. In some towns, the job is more official, paid even. Uniformed guards with halberds patrol the main streets of larger cities like Paris or London. They shout the time and chant prayers at regular intervals. 10 o'clock and all's well, though they never really believe it. It's more of a hope than a report. But here in your quiet hamlet, there's no shouting, just the occasional clang of a cowbell tied to your father's staff, meant to scare off intruders, both mortal and mystical. Historians still argue whether these night watches were mostly ceremonial or truly effective. Some believe they were a show of control, a way to calm anxious villagers. Others argue they prevented real crime and wild animal attacks, keeping communities marginally safer than the untended dark wood. Your grandmother once told you of a man who walked night patrol alone and was found days later, his hair turned white, muttering about the thing without a face that walked behind him. He never spoke in full sentences again. You tried to laugh when she said it, but now sitting here in the candlelight, it's harder to chuckle. You crawl to the window and peek through the slats. There across the road, you spot another lantern, a flicker of gold bobbing gently. Another watchman, perhaps, or not. You count to 5. The lantern blinks out, just like that. No wind, no footsteps, just gone. You tell yourself you imagined it. Back by the hearth, the candle is dying. You hurry to trim the wick hands, trembling slightly. The flame steadies, for now. Sometimes the night watchmen come back with stories, like the time a pack of dogs circled the village 3 times without barking, or the night someone heard chanting in the woods Latin, but twisted somehow, bent wrong at the edges. The watchmen walk in pairs now. They didn't used to, but last year one went out and never returned. His lantern was found by the well still lit, just sitting there. No sign of him. You reach for your boots. They're stiff cold, not exactly inviting. But your father's still out there, and something in you itches to help, even if your knees shake at the thought. You wrap a cloak around your shoulders and light another candle short, and stubby probably won't last more than an hour. You won't go far, just to the door, just to listen. You unlatch the bolt, slowly, carefully, like the hinges themselves might scold you. Cold air floods in again, and with it the sharp smell of iron. Blood, no. Just your imagination, probably. You step onto the porch boards, creaking slightly under your weight. The stars wheel overhead, unbothered by your fear. Their indifference is almost comforting. To your right, something rustles. Just a chicken, surely. Maybe a hedgehog. You whisper your father's name, but only once. You don't want to say it again. Saying names too loud at night is never wise. It invites attention. The wind picks up. Dry leaves skitter across the yard, sounding uncannily like footsteps. You clutch your cloak tighter and whisper a prayer. Half Christian, half something else. The kind of something passed down from before the monks came with their bells and books. You hear the horn, then a long, low blast from somewhere beyond the baker's house. A signal. Everything's okay. Or it's not. It depends on the number of blasts. You can't remember if two means wolf or witch. You go back inside. You shut the door. You bolt it. Twice. Your heart hammers for a while, and then the fire draws you back. You stare into the coals, letting them lull your thoughts. There's comfort in repetition, in duty, in watching the night with others. And though you're afraid, a small part of you is proud, because even fear is a kind of courage when you choose to face it. The windows have all gone black now, not from curtains, those are a luxury, but from carefully fitted shutters, latched tightly and stuffed with straw around the edges to keep out the wind and other things. You glance at the one above your bed. It doesn't quite close all the way, and that sliver of dark outside looks too much like an eye. You rise slowly, pad across the cold floor, and jam a folded bit of rag into the gap. There, safe enough for tonight, because here's the thing. Medieval windows aren't made for the night. During the day, they let in light breeze and gossip. But once the sun dips, they turn into danger holes. The kind you cover with carved boards, iron nails, and dried rosemary if you've got it. Why rosemary? Because somewhere back in time, someone said spirits hate the smell. And once a superstition survives 5 generations, it's basically science. The idea is simple. If something's going to try getting in witch ghost or uninvited breeze of the devil, it'll probably try the windows first. After all doors are locked, chimneys are sooty, windows are the weak spot. You've heard tales of children found cold and breathless in the morning, with no mark on them save a thumbprint on the sill. Or maybe it was an owl or sleep apnea. But either way, no one in the village takes chances. A shuttered window is a sealed pact with the night. And besides, once someone dies mysteriously, they often become part of the landscape of fear. No one even remembers little Jacob's last name anymore, just that he went cold one night and the window was open. Historians still argue whether these stories were real deaths, exaggerated fevers, or just creative coping mechanisms for grief. But to you and your neighbors, it's all the same. Keep the windows shut, or Jacob might visit. You pull away from the window and look around your home. Every opening is fortified. Every creak is memorized. The wind pushes at the walls like a bored god, testing each plank. Somewhere above the roof groans, probably just settling, or maybe not. At the hearth, your little sister stirs in her sleep and murmurs something that sounds suspiciously like Latin. You freeze. She doesn't know Latin. She's 4. You decide not to mention it. Instead, you busy yourself with something practical, checking the herbs. A bundle of dried lavender and sage hangs above the doorframe. Still good. A pouch of salt lies under the bed, uncertain origin, slightly crusty. Still good. And on the table a small dish of bread, crumbs, and milk. An offering, not to God, to something else. Some say it's for the domovoi. Others say brownies. Some whisper of the good neighbors, which is what you're supposed to call them if you want to stay on their good side. Fairies, but not the winged Disney kind, the old ones. The ones who might rearrange your bones if you forget to leave them a treat. Superstition weaves its way into daily life here, like thread through wool. You don't question it. You just do it. You leave the crumbs. You avoid whistling after dark. You knock 3 times before entering an empty room, not because you believe it all, because what if it's true? You've heard the story about the woman from the next village who forgot her breadcrumb dish one night and found her cow dead the next morning. Its hooves pointed the wrong way. No blood, no tracks, just wrong. The priest said it was illness. The old widow said it was the night folk. Everyone nodded and kept their opinions to themselves. That's the way it is. No one agrees on the reason, but everyone agrees to behave as if the reason is real. You hear a knock, not on the door, not a fist, just a soft tap-tap like a bird. But you know there are no birds at this hour. You hold your breath, nothing. You tell yourself it was the wind, maybe a shutter knocked loose somewhere, maybe your father returning early. You wait for the horn signal. It doesn't come. You stare at the door again. The cross above it seems to lean slightly. Or maybe that's your imagination. You think of moving it, straightening it. But something tells you not to touch it. You're not even particularly religious, to be honest. You've skipped your share of masses pretended to be ill to avoid confession. But come nightfall, everyone becomes a believer of something. Your eyes drift back to the window. That sliver is still there. This time you don't just patch it. You lift a stool and wedge it hard against the sill. Overkill, maybe, but you'll sleep better. You think of what the old beggar once said in the square. He'd lived through 2 plagues of famine and 3 wives, but he swore the scariest thing he ever saw was a light in his window that wasn't fire and wasn't the moon, just hovering, silent, blue. Then it blinked out. He moved the next week. You never saw him again. You return to bed, blanket drawn up tight, straw mattress crunching beneath you. You whisper a little prayer. It's a messy mix of Hail Marys and your grandmother's lullabies. Something about St. Christopher. Something about a dog with glowing eyes. You're not sure what's protection and what's nonsense anymore, but you say it anyway. As your eyes begin to close, the fire flickers once more. You open them, just for a moment. The window is still blocked. The door is still shut. And you remember that knock. Just one more time. Tap, tap. You're definitely imagining it. Definitely. The candle has burned down to a stub, its wax pooled like melted bone on the wooden plate beneath. You don't dare light another, just yet. Candles aren't exactly falling from the sky, and you've got to stretch what you have until market day. So for now, you sit in near dark, the fire's dying glow casting long, sleepy shadows on the walls. And in those shadows, your mind begins to play tricks. You've lived your whole life hearing that some things thrive in darkness, some just come alive. Others, well, they never really sleep to begin with. That's why the town council, such as it is, assigns 2 watchmen per night. And even then, the old folks say that's not enough. 1 to patrol, 1 to pray. That's how it used to be done, back when people still remembered why you shouldn't walk the streets alone after dusk. Not just for bandits or beasts, but for things with no names. Tonight, it's your father out there, somewhere between the mill and the pasture, carrying nothing but a lantern and a weather-warped spear with a chipped iron tip. If something's going to leap from the bushes, there won't be much he can do. But it's the act of patrolling that matters. The message it sends, we are watching. Even if the dark doesn't care. You hear the faint clang of his cowbell again, 3 short bursts, a signal to let you know he's near the southern gate. A routine route, nothing alarming. Still your stomach knots. You wonder if he's whistling softly, like he always does to convince himself he's not afraid. You wonder if his eyes are playing the same games with shadow and shape. The alleys he walks are narrow, uneven. The stones hold puddles like memory. And somewhere in the corner of your mind, you remember the story of the black dog. Not a real dog. Not really. They call it the church grim, in some parts black shuck in others. A shadowy creature with glowing eyes said to patrol the churchyards after dark. Some claim it's a protector. Others say it drags souls to hell. Most people simply don't mention it at all, like not saying its name might make it forget you exist. And of course, this is exactly where your father has to pass. By the small churchyard on the hill. You imagine the crooked tombstones there, like jagged teeth in the moonlight. The rusted gate creaking in the wind. The sound of his boots on wet earth. And just beyond the fence watching something tall maybe, or hunched. You can't quite decide. Historians still debate whether the black dog myth came from real wolves, rabid strays, or shared hallucinations spurred by starvation and stress. But in your world, it doesn't matter. The idea exists. The fear is real. You don't walk past that graveyard unless it's full noon and someone else is with you. And even then, you hurry. You glance around the house again. Your mother's asleep now, finally. The baby's curled like a dough bun on her chest. You tiptoe closer and gently add a log to the fire. It hisses, spits, then settles, throwing new light across the room. That's when you notice it. The window, the one with the rag, and the stool jammed against it, there's frost on the glass. But it's not that cold out. Not yet. You step toward it slowly, heart picking up speed, just to check, just to be sure. You press your finger to the glass. The frost melts instantly, but it's not the frost that matters. It's the shape, a smudge, 4 perfect ovals, like fingertips, pressed from the outside. You step back, no sound, no knock, just that lingering print on the other side of the glass. You stare at it, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was you earlier. Maybe the cold came suddenly. Maybe it's nothing. But your gut says otherwise. You pull the stool back tighter against the window and mutter something between a prayer and a curse. Your grandmother always said if you couldn't decide which to use, say both. It can't hurt. And just then another signal. 3 more bell rings from outside. But this time they're fast, not routine. Your body tenses. That's not the pattern. That's alert. You rush to the door, heart pounding. Your mother stirs behind you but doesn't wake. You listen hard. Nothing. Then hurried footsteps in the lane. Your father's voice calling out something muffled. Another man's voice, shaky. You crack the door. They're both there, lanterns, raised eyes wide. Not panicked, but spooked. There's something near the south fence, your father says. We didn't see it, just heard breathing. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't have to. You bolt the door again harder this time, as if that will help. Back by the fire, you sit and stare. The frost on the window is gone now. The house is warm, too warm. You wipe sweat from your brow and try to settle, try to find peace in the repetition of the fire's crackle. You make tea with a pinch of dried sage. Your hands are shaking. You think of the window. You think of the breathing. You sip. It helps. A little. The candle finally sputters and dies, leaving only the orange belly of the hearth to push back the dark. You sit there, mug warm in your hand, the faint scent of sage mixing with smoke and something faintly metallic, maybe your nerves, maybe something else. You glance at the embers, watching them shift and glow. They remind you of eyes half-lidded and glowing in the dark. You shake your head. Not tonight. You think about relighting a candle, but beeswax is precious and you've only got 2 left. 1 for Sunday, 1 for emergencies. The thing is, you're not sure which tonight is. The floor creaks and you whip around, but it's only your little brother stumbling from sleep in that dream-drunk way children do. His cheeks are flushed hair stuck in impossible angles. He murmurs, "Where's the light?" and clings to your side. You wrap him in your arms, trying not to let him feel your heartbeat, which is galloping like a stolen horse. You whisper, "It's all right," even though it probably isn't. He stares at the hearth, then up at the ceiling. "There was something in the corner," he mumbles. "By the beams." You glance upward. The thatch is heavy with age, crisscrossed with smoke-darkened rafters and old spider webs. Nothing moves, but you don't say so, because he's not the kind to make things up. And children see things, don't they? Everyone knows that. They haven't yet learned to ignore the flickering edges of the world. You tuck him under a blanket close to the fire. You tell him stories, not to entertain but to distract. A trick you learned from your grandmother: tell a story until they forget to be afraid, or until you do. You pick one about St. Cuthbert and the talking bird, a cheerful one where the bird warns of danger and helps him escape a wolf. Your brother giggles, once then burrows into the blanket like a frightened rabbit. You sit there watching him and the rafters. You wonder not for the first time how safe this house really is, because these walls wattle and daub patched a dozen times weren't made to withstand everything. They hold up against wind and rain, yes, even wolves most times, but against other things, the kind that whisper, the kind that knock without hands, the kind that breathe under doors. Maybe not. You remember what your uncle once said after too much cider: a house only keeps out what asks permission. He laughed when he said it, but he also never spent the night without salt on every windowsill and a knife under his pillow. That knife sits under your pillow now. You haven't told your mother. She thinks prayers are enough. Maybe they are, but the knife has a comfort to it, cold, weighty, real. Unlike some of the things you fear, you stare at the fire again. It's low now. Hungry, you feed it another log, and for a moment it flares, throwing wild shadows across the room. You spot it, just a flicker. In the reflection of the window glass, you see something shift behind you. You spin. Nothing. Of course. But your breath is shallow now, and that metallic scent is stronger. You know the rule. Don't look into the darkness too long. It starts looking back. So you turn away, focus on the small real things, the crackle of the log, the rhythm of your brother's breathing, the steady tick of the water dripping into the pan beneath the leak near the back door. 1, 2, 3. Then nothing. The dripping stops. You stand, that pan has never stopped dripping in weeks. You walk slowly to the back door. The draft is stronger here. You reach for the pan still wet. You look up at the beam above. It's dry. The leak is gone. You should be glad. But you're not. Because things don't just stop leaking. Not like that. Not in this house. You reach out and touch the door frame. The wood feels colder than it should. The latch is still drawn, but the door itself is slightly ajar. Just a hair. You didn't leave it that way. You press it closed firmly, fingers tight, on the iron latch. You brace the broom against it for good measure, and that's when you hear it. The unmistakable sound of breathing. Not yours, not your brother's. From the other side, close, too close. You do not open the door. You back away, slow, steady like a deer in a clearing. Back to the hearth, back to the fire, back to the knife. You sit. Your brother stirs but doesn't wake. You pick up the blade. It's small, dull, meant for cheese, but it steadies you. The breathing doesn't come again, but neither does the dripping. You check the windows. No more frost, no more prints. Still, everything feels paused, like the house itself is holding its breath. You hum softly, a lullaby you barely remember. Just enough to tether you to here to now. Historians still argue whether people of your time feared the night because of actual dangers or because the church encouraged dread to enforce moral control. You think maybe both. Maybe when people say evil, they're not always speaking in metaphors. Maybe sometimes the dark is just dark, and sometimes it's something else entirely. You add one last log to the fire and keep the knife in your hand just for tonight, just in case. The fire pops, sending up a spray of orange sparks that disappear into the dark chimney above. You flinch, not from the noise, but from the sudden reminder of how thin the barrier really is between you and everything else. You're not alone in this worry. Down the road, across the fields, in every village house and farmstead, within a day's walk, people are doing the same thing. You are sitting up longer than they should, listening too closely to sounds that never quite resolve. And in the monasteries, the quiet stone giants looming beyond town, there are others awake for a different reason entirely. The monks. You've seen them in daylight faces, solemn hands always busy, tending gardens, copying books, singing prayers. But at night they become something else entirely. Custodians of the dark hours, watchers, whisperers. The first time you heard their voices drift across the hills at midnight, you thought you were dreaming. A soft murmur carried on the wind, low, rhythmic, ancient. It wasn't until your mother told you the next day that you realized what it was. The divine office, specifically matins. A sacred song sung in the small hours when no one else dares speak. A prayer to ward off the devil, to stand as a lantern in the spiritual night. You sit now by your fire and strain to hear it again. Sometimes, if the wind comes from the north, the echoes reach your village like a lullaby for those too frightened to sleep. Tonight, you hear nothing. That might be worse. You imagine the monastery in your mind. A great hall, dark but alive with flickering torchlight. Monks in rough robes, voices overlapping like rain. Their chants are in Latin, of course, and though you barely understand a word, the effect is unmistakable comfort. A woven net of sound meant to hold back the tide. But there's something else, too. You've heard whispers. that these nightly rituals aren't just about piety. That long ago, monks discovered something the rest of the world forgot, that sound keeps things away, that some entities don't like song, especially not song with conviction. Historians still argue whether these rituals were purely religious or also served as psychological shields against the stress and fear of medieval nights. But in your village theory doesn't matter. It feels like protection. That's enough. You remember when Father Bernard visited for the harvest blessing last autumn. He looked you straight in the eyes and said, "The devil walks most freely between midnight and cockcrow. You must not sleep then. You must pray." You nodded solemn as expected, but you couldn't help wonder if God is everywhere. Why does he sleep at night? No one asked, of course. You shift on your stool and glance toward the ceiling again. The shadows are longer now, stretched into uncomfortable shapes by the guttering fire. You speak aloud, not to anyone really, just to cut the silence. Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. It's the only Latin you remember. It helps. A little. You wonder what the monks are doing right now. Probably walking the cloisters in a slow circle, each footstep echoing across stone, or kneeling in a chamber where every wall has heard 10,000 whispered prayers. You envy them in a way. Not because they're safe, they're not. Everyone knows spirits haunt abbeys just as easily as homes. But because they have structure, a rhythm, a purpose, and purpose in the night is armor. Back in your cottage, your brother stirs again. You think he's waking, but no, he's sitting bolt upright, eyes wide and glassy. You freeze. He turns his head toward the shuttered window, blinks once, and says in a voice that is not quite his, he's standing there. Your breath catches. You move to him fast, kneeling at his side. You shake his shoulder gently. Who, Tom, who's standing where? But his eyes close, and he collapses back onto the straw mat as if nothing happened. You sit there, your hand still on his chest, feeling it rise and fall. Normal, calm, but you don't feel calm. You rise and walk slowly to the window. You touch the shutter, press your ear against it. Nothing. You check the latch, still bolted. Then why does it feel like you're being watched? You return to the hearth and stir the fire again. The smoke curls thick and blue, now like it doesn't want to rise. You whisper Sanctus again, then again, then again. The repetition calms you, makes the walls feel firmer, the floor more solid. But still your mind drifts to the monastery, to the monks whispering their sacred lines like a spell, to the idea that prayer is a kind of music, and music is a kind of wall. You grab a stick and tap it softly on the stone floor, trying to mimic their rhythm. It's awkward, childish, but soon you find it. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. And then quietly you hum. Not a hymn exactly, just a tune you remember from a feast day once sung by a drunk friar with honey on his lips and joy in his step. It's enough. The silence shifts, less heavy, less sharp. Your brother sighs in his sleep. You keep humming, because this soft, foolish sound might be the only light you have left until dawn. You wake with a start, head tilted uncomfortably against the hearth wall, your neck aching and your mouth dry. The fire is nearly gone now, just a few faint coals glowing like tired eyes. You're not sure how long you slept. An hour. Less your brother is still tucked beneath the blanket, one arm flung out like he was reaching for something in a dream. The room is quiet, but it doesn't feel empty. You sit up slowly. Every board beneath you seems to creak just a bit louder than it did before. And then you hear it. A low, distant sound, not close, not urgent, but there. A howl, long, hollow, and unmistakable. You freeze. Wolves. They've been quiet for weeks, but now, of course, tonight they've returned. They don't howl just for the moon. That's a myth. They howl to find each other, to declare territory, and sometimes to signal the beginning of a hunt. You move to the door, cautiously pressing your ear to the thick wood. The latch holds firm. No footsteps, no breathing, just the wind and the occasional crack of ice melting from the roofline. You hear the howl again, this time closer. You're not alone in noticing it. From somewhere out in the village, a cow moans a low, pained sound. Then silence. Then the frantic clatter of hooves on frozen dirt. You imagine the poor creature slipping, panicking, trying to bolt through a fence in the dark. You imagine teeth. Your heart quickens. Wolves don't come into the village unless they're starving. And if they're starving now, you light the last bit of candle. The stub hisses, catching slowly, like it knows how little time it has. You set it near the door and scan the room for anything useful. The knife is still under your pillow. The poker lies by the fire, half buried in ash. You grip it like a sword, even though it's nothing more than blackened iron. And then you think of the fence, the one at the edge of the south field. It's weak, you know it. Everyone knows it. It leans like an old man in the wind. If wolves are coming, that's where they'll come from. And your father hasn't come home. You whisper a soft curse, not a strong one, just a peasant's exhale, and throw on your boots. No time to lace them properly. You shrug into your cloak, snatch the candle, and unbolt the door. The cold outside hits you like a slap. Not just cold, wet, heavy. The kind of dampness that seeps into bone. You keep the candle cupped in your palm as you step out. The mud grabs at your boots. Every sound is louder in the dark. A snap to your left. You spin. Nothing. Then a breath, a real one. Warm, fast. It's your father. He stumbles into view, lantern-swinging breath, puffing like smoke. His face is pale, eyes wide. Fence, he says. They're testing it. Of course they are. You don't ask if he means animals or something else, because sometimes it's both. You both return to the house quickly, the candle's flame licking at the edges of your vision. Your father bolts the door behind you and grabs a rope, tying it around the handle for extra hold. I saw eyes, he says quietly, not just wolves. You look at him. He doesn't explain. You don't ask. You both sit watching the fire die slowly. The room is dim now, shadowed in gold and rust. The smell of smoke clings to your clothes like a memory. You glance at the candle, it's nearly done. You remember what the shepherd said last spring, your father asks suddenly. You nod. Of course you do. He'd been found wandering the woods after a storm, eyes bleeding, voice gone. When he finally spoke, he said the wolves had spoken to him, said they had names, said one of them knew his name. No one believed him exactly, but no one laughed either, because wolves are more than animals in the stories passed down in your family. Sometimes they're cursed men, sometimes they're devils with fur, and sometimes they're just hungry shadows that take advantage of weak fences and long winters. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed wolves were evil, or if that idea came later, filtered through centuries of stories and sermons. But sitting here now with that howl still echoing in your skull, belief feels like a useless distinction. Your father finally lays down, not in bed, just against the wall, boots still on. You do the same. You both pretend to rest, eyes closed, but neither of you sleeps. Outside, the wind howls, and beneath it softer still, so do they. The wolves don't howl again. That's the worst part, because silence in a night like this doesn't mean safety. It means waiting. You lie still, muscles sore from holding tension, two long ears straining for any sign that the danger has passed or is getting closer. The candle finally dies beside you with a faint hiss, its last breath curling into the dark like a whisper. The fire is no more than a faint shimmer. Now the logs collapsed into sleepy orange coals. You should rest, but your body refuses. Instead, your mind starts filling in the gaps, the quiet creak upstairs that might be settling wood or might not. The rustle under the table that was definitely a rat, probably. The sensation faint but real of someone watching you from the rafters. You sit up. You can't help it. You look. Nothing. Of course. You lie back down again. But now your thoughts have wandered into old stories, ones you've known since childhood, but never fully questioned until nights like this. Stories like the moon-lost traveler. You remember it clearly. A young man goes walking after dark, full of pride and foolishness. The moon is full. His path is clear. But then somehow it shifts. He follows what he thinks is a lantern, bouncing gently in the woods ahead, follows it for hours. But when dawn finally breaks, he finds himself in a bog miles from home, his boots gone, his tongue swollen, no memory of how he got there, no footprints behind him. People said he was led astray by spirits. Others whispered will-o'-the-wisps. Some said fairies, though they always used a different word, the good folk, because naming them outright might invite them in. Historians still argue whether these tales arose from real disappearances, hallucinations caused by hunger or fever, or simply the human mind's need to explain the random cruelty of nature. But to you, it's not about whether it happened. It's that it could. That's the medieval mind, really. It doesn't demand proof. It just demands possibility. You wrap the blanket tighter, heart slowing a little, as you remember that you're inside, sheltered, sort of. You stare at the coals again, trying to trace shapes in them. You see a fox, then a face, then nothing at all. Somewhere outside a door creaks open. You stiffen, listen. It isn't your house. A neighbor's, perhaps. Or maybe the wind. You tell yourself not to panic, that you've heard these sounds before. But tonight they press closer. You think of the tale of the hollow guest, a creature not quite spirit, not quite man, appears at a stranger's door, cloaked, hooded, asking for shelter, never lifts his head, never takes off his boots, but he eats, drinks, nods politely. Then just before dawn, he vanishes. And the next day, someone in the house falls ill or doesn't wake at all. You once asked your grandmother how to tell if a guest is real. She said, "Look at their feet. If they leave no prints, send them away." You don't know if she meant it literally or not. You never asked. You rise and check the latch again, still secure. But now you tuck the end of the blanket into the gap under the door. You don't know why exactly, just that it feels like the right thing to do. Then you return to your brother's side. He's asleep again, mouth slightly open, lashes fluttering. He doesn't seem afraid anymore. Maybe he never was. Maybe that strange voice earlier was just a dream. You hope so, because there's something especially cruel about the dark speaking through a child. You close your eyes, try to will yourself into stillness. Think of anything else, but your brain is determined to sabotage you. You remember last summer when the old miller's daughter got lost coming home from the river. She was only gone one night, but when they found her, her hair had turned completely white. She never spoke again. Some said she fell in the river and hit her head. Some said she wandered into a fairy ring and saw something no human should. You saw her once, weeks later, sitting on the edge of the well, hands folded, smiling at something no one else could see. You don't go near that well anymore. Even now you glance out the window, only to remember the shutters are still drawn tight. Good. Let the dark stay out there. Still you whisper a short prayer, not the long formal kind. Just 5 words. Don't take us tonight, please. It's not in Latin. It's not poetic. But it's the kind of prayer the night understands. You fall asleep without meaning to, and in that sleep you dream. You're walking a narrow path through the woods. The moon above is too bright, almost painful. Ahead you see a light, bobbing, flickering. A lantern, carried by someone just out of reach. You follow. You know better, but you follow anyway. Each step feels slower, heavier, like the trees are leaning in, like the wind is whispering your name, but wrong off by a syllable. You reach the light. There's no one holding it. It hangs in the air. You reach for it and wake. Breath sharp, room dark, fire dead. But you're safe, you think, at least until the next sound. You don't move at first. You lie there, heart thudding against your ribs, like it wants out, eyes scanning the black ceiling, as though it might part and tell you what woke you. Because something did. You didn't stir from sleep on your own. You felt it, a presence, a shift, a tilt in the pressure of the room. The air is different now, not colder exactly, not warmer either, just occupied. Your fingers tighten on the blanket. The fire is out completely. No glow, no embers, just the faint smell of ash and the ghost of yesterday's heat. You shift your eyes to the window, even though you can't see it in the dark. You know exactly where it is. Every creak of the shutters, every knot in the frame. And right now it's too quiet. You listen. No wolves, no wind, no bells from the watchman. Just silence. You push yourself up slowly, careful not to wake your brother. He's curled tightly now, like a sleeping cat, breath even dreamless, or so you hope. You whisper his name once just to check. He doesn't stir. You envy him. Then there it is again, a sound, soft, almost delicate, not outside. Inside, a footstep, not the firm tread of a parent or the scatter of a mouse, but something in between, barefoot maybe. Cautious, you reach under your bedding, fingers closing on the handle of your dull little knife, still warm from your body. Your breath comes faster. You whisper, "Who's there?" Silence. You wait. "Who's?" You begin again, louder. But then something creaks. Not a footstep this time. A floorboard, right behind you. You spin and hold the knife out like it means something. And you see nothing. Of course. Still your hand shakes. You remember a story told by the cobbler's wife, one late autumn evening when the cider had loosened her tongue. She said when she was a girl she'd woken in the middle of the night and seen her own shadow standing in the corner of the room, facing her, but cast against the wrong wall. She tried to scream, but couldn't, and then it stepped away from the wall and vanished through the floor. Everyone had laughed nervously, of course, but no one asked if she still saw it. You peer into every corner of the cottage now. You know the shapes, you know the furniture, you know how things should look in the dark. But tonight, they're wrong, slightly wrong. The stool by the window is angled differently. The ladle on the table is turned the wrong way. None of it makes sense. You tell yourself maybe your father moved them, except your father isn't here and hasn't returned. You check the latch again, still locked, but you notice something else now. The bowl of crumbs by the window, the offering to whatever watches, is empty. That's not unusual. What is unusual is that it's clean, licked clean. You bend over it, heart drumming. Not a crumb, not a smudge. You sniff it. Milk. Gone. Bread. Gone. No rats. No insects. No sign it was ever full. You step back, hand still clutching the knife. Your back hits the wall, and that's when the candle relights. By itself. Not flaring. Not flinching. Just a sudden, steady glow. You freeze. It sits where you left it burned to the nub. But now it's a flame again, bright and unbothered. The flame does not flicker. It just burns. Historians still debate whether medieval belief in ghost lights or ignis fatuus came from methane in bogs or psychological suggestion. But this is no swamp. This is your home, your hearth, and the candle is burning. You walk toward it slowly, unsure if you should blow it out or let it die again on its own. But before you decide, it snuffs itself. No smoke, just gone. The room is dark again. You back away. You whisper a prayer, then another, then a third this time, not bothering with words, just sound syllables that feel old. Maybe older than Latin, maybe older than prayer. Your breath fogs in the cold, and then, without meaning to, you say, "I see you." You're not sure why, but the moment the words leave your lips, the room feels different, not better, not worse, just aware, as though something that had been circling is now looking directly at you. You squeeze the knife. It's warm now, or maybe that's you. Your brother murmurs in his sleep again, something about rain. You lean down to shush him gently, and behind you the floor creaks once more. You do not turn, not this time. You whisper instead, "We've left you bread. We've shown respect. Take nothing else." You say it like a charm, like your grandmother taught you, like a trade, like an ancient promise. The house holds its breath, then releases it. The tension ebbs just slightly, enough for your knees to stop trembling. You sit down again, never turning your back on the dark corner near the ladder to the loft. And you wait for dawn, for your father, for something that feels human again. The first sign of morning isn't light, it's birdsong. Soft at first, just a single note as if one tiny throat is testing the air, unsure if it's safe. Then another joins, and another, until the dark is pricked with threads of song, so fine they almost pass for silence. You sit up slowly, muscles stiff, neck aching from where you dozed, sitting upright, still clutching the knife. Your brother is still curled beside you now, with one hand flopped across his face. He breathes easy. You let out a long breath too. Not relief, not yet, but something close. Then comes the second sign, smoke. Thin white curls waft from the chimney of your neighbor's house. Someone's kindled their morning fire, which means you made it, so did they, or at least they think they did. You move to the door and press your hand to it. Still solid, still bolted. And yet last night's unease hasn't left. It's in your bones. You feel it in your scalp, in the tightness around your eyes. The room is still too quiet, still too cold, still watched. You walk to the window and unlatch the shutter cautiously. A shaft of pale gray light floods in, catching the dust in the air like a spell unraveling. The outside world has returned to its place. Sort of. The trees beyond the pasture are still bare. The fields still damp with night frost. The sky is the color of wet wool. Everything looks exactly how it should, and somehow completely wrong. There are footprints in the mud. Not boots, not paws, bare feet. Leading up to your door and away again. No one in your house has stepped outside, not since yesterday. You don't follow them, not yet, not alone. Instead, you check the bowl by the window again. Still clean, still gleaming. The milk was accepted. That's good, isn't it? But you don't feel grateful. You feel bartered, like something came and took what it was owed. You glance at the candle stub, charred, cold, no trace of the flame that had reappeared. You think of your father again. He still hasn't returned. Just then, your mother stirs from the back of the house. Her hair is a mess of braids, half loosened in sleep, and her eyes are puffy with worry. Did he come back? She asks, before even saying good morning. You shake your head. She doesn't ask another question, just starts dressing. You grab your boots this time, lacing them properly. You're going to look for him, not with fear, with duty. That's what you tell yourself. Before you open the door, you whisper a line your grandmother once taught you. Step out on even foot. Leave no trace and look behind only once. She said it kept the forest from noticing you. You step out. The sky is lightening now, though the sun still hides behind a wall of clouds. The village is waking up. Doors creaking open. Hens rustling. Someone coughing. You nod at your neighbor, who's pouring water from a bucket. She nods back, but her eyes are wide. She's seen the footprints too. You make your way to the south fence. The mud is thick here, sticky. It clings to your boots like fingers. You see where it happened. 2 boards bent inward, splintered and fur, caught on a nail. Not wolf, not deer. Something coarse, almost wiry, the color of rust. You pluck a tuft of it free and sniff it. It smells like iron and soil. You pocket it without thinking. Then tracks. Too many to count. Some clawed, some not. All circling the area like a ritual. And in the center, hoof prints. Hooves, not horses, smaller, and facing the wrong way. You step back. Now you understand why your father hasn't come home. He followed something. And whatever he followed, he didn't want it to reach the village. You return home with slow steps. You don't speak when you enter. Your mother looks at you, sees your expression, and says nothing. Instead, she gathers her rosary. You sit at the hearth again, hands in your lap, eyes on the place where the candle once burned bright for no reason at all. Your brother wakes at last, yawning, asking for bread. You bring him some. As he chews, he says, I dreamt he was watching me. You pause. Who the man with no face? You do not answer. You simply press your palm to his forehead. No fever, just a story, just a dream, probably. Historians still argue about the boundary between folklore and collective memory, whether stories like the man with no face are metaphors for death, or if they come from something older, something real, worn down by time and denial. You don't argue, you just keep the shutters drawn a little longer than usual. And when you sweep the hearth, you whisper thank you, because whatever watched you last night didn't stay. Or if it did, it left you whole. That's as much grace as you're likely to get. The days that follow are gray and restless. Your father doesn't return. Not the first day, not the second, not even by the seventh, when your mother stops leaving the door unlatched at dusk. You still listen for his signal bell, 3 low clangs, and sometimes you think you hear it. But it's always something else. A gate swinging, a pot falling, your heart inventing echoes it wants to believe in. The village doesn't speak of him directly. They ask softly, "Any news?" but avoid your eyes. No one wants to say what they're all thinking, that he's gone the same way others have gone before, that the night took him, and no one blames him. The south fence was breached. Something had to be followed, tracked, confronted. Better one man lost than a village cursed. Your mother lights a candle for him every night. Just one. She sets it beside the window bowl, now regularly filled with milk and bits of crust. Sometimes it's taken, sometimes it's not. She never remarks on it, and still you sleep poorly because the nights haven't returned to normal, if they ever were. The fire burns oddly now, sputtering at strange intervals. The shadows stretch too far. Sometimes your brother talks in his sleep, words that rhyme but don't make sense, names you've never heard. You stopped sleeping by the hearth. You've taken to sitting near the door instead, knife, still in hand, ears, trained to the cracks in the walls. Last night, something tapped at the roof, a single tap, then another, then silence. You didn't go outside, because you remembered the story of the roof walker. Not a man, not an animal, just a sound, the kind that moves lightly without weight, as though walking on memory instead of timber. They say it visits when something's been left undone, an unpaid debt, a broken promise, a soul unburied, and your father's body has not been found. Historians still argue whether the roof-walker legend was an early personification of grief, a metaphor, they say, for what lingers when closure is denied. But metaphors don't make your skin crawl. Metaphors don't scratch at the eaves. So you stay inside even during the day. You chop wood. You tend the goats. You help your mother clean, but you do not leave the yard unless you must. Not since the thing with the footprints. They returned, sir, twice. Once leading toward your home, once circling it, always barefoot, always too long between toes, always vanishing before they should. No one else speaks of them. But the village has changed. People hang garlic where they never did before. A girl wears a pouch of ash at her throat. Now protection, she says, from voices. The baker insists on closing an hour before sunset. And the priest's sermons, once loud and full of fire, have grown quieter, as if he too is listening. One night your grandmother visits. She walks, slowly leans heavily on her stick, but her eyes, those are sharp. Sharper than the knife you keep under your pillow. She sits beside the hearth without invitation and says only one thing: he's not dead. You blink. She nods, but he's not among the living either. You want to scream at her, ask what she means, demand answers, but you don't. because something in her voice isn't meant to be challenged. She reaches into her satchel and pulls out a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside is a black feather, a stone carved with a spiral, and a bit of cloth that smells like rosemary and smoke. These were his, she says. You don't know how she got them. You don't ask. She adds them to the hearth, not into the fire, but around it in a circle. Then she hums, not a melody, a tone, deep and steady. You join her without knowing why. Your mother doesn't stop her. Your brother doesn't wake. You hum for 10 minutes, then she stands. Don't bury his name yet, she says. Then she leaves. And that night, for the first time in weeks, you sleep. Not deeply, not peacefully, but whole. In your dream, your father is standing by the fence, holding his lantern. He turns toward you. But before you can see his face, you wake. The fire is still burning. The candle is still lit. And outside, the birds are singing. The morning after your grandmother's visit feels heavier than most, not darker, but denser, like the sky has leaned in a little closer overnight. The air smells of wet ash and dew-soaked moss. You stand at the door with the latch still drawn, not quite ready to open it. Your father's boots are still by the step, just where he left them. You haven't moved them. You won't. It would feel wrong, like accepting something you're not ready to say aloud. You finally unbolt the door and step outside. The footprints are gone, erased not by rain, there hasn't been any, but by something more deliberate. The mud is smooth, wiped, as though someone ran a sleeve across the earth to blot out the evidence. Not even a bird track remains. You scan the tree line. Nothing stirs, but something watches. You can feel it. Not hostile, not exactly, just aware. You gather firewood and return inside. The hearth is still ringed with your grandmother's odd tokens, stone feather cloth. You haven't touched them. Neither has your mother. No one needs to explain that kind of thing. You tend the fire, stirring it gently until the coals catch. The spiral-carved stone catches the light. For a moment, it almost glows. You don't hum. Not today. Instead, you go about your chores with the quiet understanding that something has shifted. You can't say what. Only that your home feels not safer, but more stable, like a deal has been struck. Historians still debate whether medieval folk believed they could negotiate with spirits, or if such acts were simply desperate superstition in times of grief. But here in this moment, it feels very much like an agreement has been made. The candle by the window has burned out, but the wick is clean, too clean, as if it burned in still air without flicker or flaw. You replace it with another carefully. Light it. Whisper the same words you've said every night since your father vanished. Take this offering and leave us be. It's not church approved, but it's worked so far. Your mother is out back mending the goat pen. Your brother is in the loft, humming to himself as he stacks kindling into a crooked little tower. You tell him to stop. He smiles without looking at you and keeps humming. Later, you walk the field again. The south fence has been patched, new boards, iron nails, and above the gate something new, a charm hung by the watchman. Not a cross, not a saint, just a crude carving of a circle with a line through it. It means, do not pass. You nod at it. You will not pass, not yet. As you walk back, you remember something your father once said, half joking, on a warm night, when the sky was full of stars. Day keeps the monsters far. Night teaches us which ones are real. You thought he was talking about wolves. Now you're not so sure. That evening, as the sun slips behind the trees, your brother places a small pebble beside the hearth. He doesn't say why. You leave it there. Then you all sit by the fire. Your mother does not cry. You do not speak of the door. You do not ask if the bread was taken. Instead, you speak of spring and planting, and whether the goat will birth twins again this year. You speak of living things, the kind that grow. You sleep by the window this time. You watch the candle flicker, and just before your eyes drift shut, you think you hear it again. A bell, not loud, not near, but distinct. 3 low clangs. And a whisper, like a voice stretched thin across the wind, I remember. You sit up sharply. Nothing is outside. The footprints have not returned, but the candle burns steady. And for once, the dark does not feel like it's pressing in. It just is. You fall asleep with your hand resting gently on the hearthstone, not gripping, just touching, just enough to know you're still here. You awaken to find the light already crawling through the slats in the shutters, a cold, honest sort of morning light, pale as milk and twice as thin. The fire has burned low, but it's still alive just barely. You stretch out an arm and stir the embers, feeding them with dry twigs and the quiet murmur of gratitude. It is, after all, another morning, and you are still here. Your brother is already awake. He's squatting by the window, quietly tracing shapes in the condensation that's fogged the pane. Spirals, circles. One strange symbol that looks like 2 mirrored crescent moons touching at their tips. You ask him where he learned that. He shrugs and says, "The man in the trees." You don't ask again. He doesn't speak much lately, not in the mornings, but he's calm. Sleep comes easier to him now, and the strange words he muttered before have gone quiet. It's as though something finished speaking through him and moved on. You make breakfast, porridge, slightly burned. The goat's milk is sour today, but no one complains. Your mother eats with the mechanical motion of someone trying to pretend everything is fine. You've seen this performance before. She's good at it. You're halfway through eating when you notice the bowl by the window is untouched. You all notice. No one says a word. That's the agreement, isn't it? You give. They take. Balance is maintained. But now, the crumbs are still there. The milk has begun to curdle. The candle stub burned clean last night hasn't even blackened the dish beneath it. The silence in the room shifts, not louder, just sharper, like the edge of a blade held near the skin. Your mother quietly rises, takes the bowl, and empties it into the fire. The smell is sour and bitter, and the flames react with a sudden hiss that makes everyone flinch. "We'll leave nothing tonight," she says, and that's final. Later, you venture outside boots, crunching through frost-stiffened grass. The village looks the same: carts, trundling hens, scratching smoke coiling gently from chimneys. But everyone moves a little faster today. Voices stay low. Doors close with care. You pass by old Greta's cottage, where the herbs over the doorframe have tripled in number. Red thread binds them now. "For strength," she says. You nod politely. She nods back but doesn't speak. At the church the bell rings, not the loud declarative clang of mass, but the slow dragging tone of matins hours too late. You peer inside through the half-open door and find the priest kneeling in the nave alone, his forehead pressed to the stone. He doesn't rise. You turn and leave. Back home, your brother is stacking stones around the hearth again. You tell him to stop. He ignores you. This time, the shapes are different, sharper, heavier. One stone has a perfect hole through its center. You don't remember having that one in the house. Where'd you find this, you ask? He just smiles. That night, the wind returns. Not hard, just strange. It moves against the house like it knows its shape, its weaknesses. It prods the shutters, whistles through the keyhole, touches your skin in a way that makes you flinch without knowing why. You do not light the candle. You do not leave out milk or bread. You sit beside the hearth, the spiral stone from your grandmother warm against your palm, and you wait. It's harder tonight without the offering. You feel it. So does the house. The shadows lean in. The walls creak not with settling, but with something like resistance, like they're holding something out. Historians still debate whether this type of night pressure, described in old texts, claustrophobic sensations, unseasonal cold, unexplained fear, can be chalked up to carbon monoxide sleep, paralysis, or imagination. But there's no smoke here, no fever, no dream, just awareness of a presence, of something pacing outside. You hear the crunch of dirt under a heel. Then again, you draw your knife not because it can help, but because doing something feels less frightening than doing nothing. Your brother doesn't stir. He sleeps like a stone now. Your mother grips her rosary with white knuckles. Her lips move, but no sound comes out. You glance at the door. You listen. One footstep, two, then a sigh. Not a breeze, a sigh, like something disappointed. The presence recedes, the wind softens, and slowly the room loosens its grip on your chest. You don't exhale until the fire flares again, unprovoked. A thank you or a warning. You sleep on the floor again, this time without dreams, this time holding the spiral stone tight in your fist. In the morning, the bowl is still empty, but your porch smells like rosemary. The rosemary is fresh. That's the first thing you notice when you step outside. Not dried and brittle like the bunches that hang above your doorframe, but full-leafed green, soft as velvet. A whole sprig of it resting right on your doorstep, as if carefully placed there by a thoughtful hand. You pick it up gently, half expecting it to vanish the moment you touch it. But it doesn't. It's real. Cold with morning dew, but real. You glance around, squinting at the mist curling low across the ground. The village is quiet, caught in that in-between hush before the roosters stir and the goats start bleating. No footprints in the dirt, no broken twigs, no wind, just the rosemary. You bring it inside without thinking, set it on the hearthstone beside the spiral stone and the feather. It doesn't look out of place. In fact, it seems to complete something, though you couldn't explain what. Your mother notices. Her eyes narrow, but she doesn't ask where it came from. Instead, she says, "We'll hang it, tonight." You nod. Later that day, you walk beyond the edge of the village for the first time in weeks. You don't go far, just up the slight rise where the old ash tree stands alone. From there, you can see the south fence in the distance, like a thin stitch holding back the woods. You don't go near it, but you notice something odd. Just on the other side of the fence line beyond the charms, the bent nails, the warning sign, there are stones, stacked, balanced, small cairns, each no taller than your knee. 10 of them, maybe more. You hadn't seen them yesterday. You're sure of it. They're too neat to be natural, too intentional to be ignored. You stare for a long time, waiting for some motion, some whisper, but there's nothing, just the stillness. The only sound is a crow cawing once from the top of the ash tree. You leave. Back home, your brother is drawing again. Charcoal on a scrap of parchment your mother once meant to use for mending patterns. He draws the cairns, exactly as you saw them. Did you go to the fence, you ask? He shakes his head. They showed me. You try to ask more, but he hums over you, a soft, tuneless song that curls into your ears and makes you forget the question. That night, you hang the rosemary. You don't burn it. You don't crush it. You hang it high just above the doorframe, bound with a red thread you found in your father's tool chest. It looks right there, like it's always been part of the house. And that night, something changes again. The air inside feels clearer, not warmer, not safer, but clear like fog has lifted from your thoughts. And in that clarity, you begin to remember things, little things, the exact weight of your father's boots as they thudded against the floorboards, the way he always tapped twice on the door before entering, even if it was already open. How he sang off-key while chopping wood, not because he enjoyed it, but because he thought it kept the dark from creeping too close. You write them down, line by line, not in ink, just scratches on a bit of bark you save by the hearth. You don't know why, only that remembering him seems important now, more than ever. Your grandmother arrives again just past dusk. No knock. She simply walks in as if the house expects her. She stares at the rosemary, then the spiral stone, then your brother's drawing. She nods, satisfied. It's holding, she says. What as you ask? She sits. Her knees creak. Her sigh is long. The barrier. You swallow the fence. She shakes her head. No. This. She taps the floor, the walls, her chest, the remembering. That's what keeps it out. You don't ask what it is, because you already know. You sleep better that night, not because the world outside is any gentler, but because now you understand the rules a little more. You don't leave milk. You don't hang bread. You don't beg. You remember. That's enough. Historians still debate the purpose of household rituals, whether they were rooted in religion, superstition, or a need for control in an uncontrollable world. But those scholars never stayed up all night, gripping a knife, listening to something shuffle just beyond the door. You wake once around what would have been second sleep and find the fire has burned unusually bright. No one has fed it, no log added, yet it dances tall and clean. You sit up. The bowl by the window is empty again, not cleaned, not taken, just gone, no trace. In its place, a new candle, unlit, beeswax, wrapped in a leaf, bound with thread, a gift, or a warning, or both. You don't light it, not yet. You set it beside the rosemary and sleep without fear for the first time since your father disappeared. And outside in the woods beyond the fence, something moves deeper into the trees, no longer circling, no longer testing. For now at least, it's satisfied. You spend the morning carving a small wooden shelf above the hearth. It's not much, just a narrow plank from the old oak your father felled last spring. But you sand it smooth with a bit of wool and mount it carefully. You place the spiral stone at its center, the feather to the left, the gift candle to the right. Beneath it, you tuck the rosemary, now drying its leaves, curling inward like sleeping fingers. You don't call it an altar, but it is. Your mother doesn't say anything, but later you see she's placed your father's knife on it too. The one he always used to cut apples, the blade worn dull at the tip from sharpening. That night you sit by the hearth and look at this little arrangement, this quiet tribute to a man not dead, but not among the living. You remember his voice not in conversation, but in the way he grunted when lifting buckets, the way he sang a few words too late when trying to follow a hymn. You remember the scar on his forearm, and how he claimed it came from a witch's cat, though everyone knew it was from falling off the roof, fixing the thatch. You speak his name aloud, not loudly, just enough to remind the room he existed. Your brother echoes it softly, then asks, "Can we still call him?" You pause. Not call, you say. Just remember? He nods as if that makes perfect sense. You all go to bed early that night, not from exhaustion, but from surrender, not fear either. Something else, a sense that tonight nothing will come, or if it does, it will pass through gently. But still, you wake in the middle of the night, heart thudding, because something is here. It's not touching the house, not scratching at the door, not whispering through the cracks. It's inside, not physically, not fully, just presence. You sit up slowly, eyes adjusting to the dim orange glow of the coals. The shelf above the hearth is lit just enough to catch the outline of the candle and the spiral stone, and the new shape beside them, a folded scrap of cloth. You didn't place it there, neither did your mother. You reach up hand shaking and lift it gently. It's a handkerchief, rough linen, stained with something rusty. You hold it to your nose. It smells like pine, sweat, earth, and you know this smell. It's his. Historians still argue whether medieval people kept tokens of the dead to feel close to them or to keep something from following them, whether a lock of hair or a piece of clothing was a comfort or a ward. You don't know what this cloth is, but it doesn't frighten you. You press it to your chest, close your eyes, and whisper again, "I remember." And the room exhales. The air grows still, not heavy, not waiting, just still. The way a field feels in the moment before snowfall. You hear no footsteps, you feel no eyes, but you know something received your words and left. You tuck the cloth into a pouch around your neck, then lie back down. You sleep deeper than you have in weeks. No dreams, no waking, you just dark and breath and peace. In the morning, your mother finds a single goat outside the pen, standing motionless, staring toward the woods. It doesn't move until you speak its name. Then it trots over, bleats once, and nuzzles your hand. On its left horn hangs a scrap of red thread, the same kind your grandmother used, the same kind that bound the rosemary. You don't remove it, you let it stay. That evening, you find your brother whispering at the hearth. You crouch beside him. "What are you saying?" "I'm telling them what I saw." Who he shrugs, "Whoever's listening." You both sit a while longer watching the candle, not the gift one, but a fresh one from your stores, burn slow and steady. When it gutters slightly, your brother murmurs, "They like stories better than silence." You believe him. So you tell one, a tale your father told you once about a blacksmith who made horseshoes for fairies and lost his voice in return. Your brother laughs at the ending, even though it isn't funny. Laughter, you suspect, is another kind of offering. That night you leave no milk, no crumbs, just your voice. And when the fire flickers high, unasked, unprovoked, you know it's been heard. Winter softens its grip, but it doesn't release it. The mornings are still breath-steamed and brittle with frost. The sun is slow to rise, and when it does, it brings little warmth, just enough to melt the top layer of ice before dusk turns it slick again. But something else has changed. The nights are quieter now. Not silent, not empty, but no longer hostile. The pressure that once pressed against the shutters and slithered through the thatch has receded. The fear still lingers, yes, but it has thinned, like breath fading on glass. You don't let your guard down, none of you do, but you move with more ease. You open the door before the second knock. You stand by the window longer in the evenings, watching the stars instead of the shadows between trees. And your brother, he starts speaking more, drawing less. His pictures turn from spirals and cairns to goat's carts, the occasional poorly shaped chicken. He laughs louder now. The gift candle still sits on the shelf. You haven't lit it. Your mother won't let you. It wasn't meant for light, she says. It's a placeholder, a promise. You don't ask what she means. You're not sure you want to know. Still the hearth altar grows, not with new trinkets, but with little touches. A fresh sprig of pine, a bit of iron nail bent into a loop. The handkerchief now folded and placed in a small wooden box your grandmother carved and left without comment. These aren't offerings anymore. They're anchors. And you understand now that's what the fear fed on, most forgetting. The night became dangerous because it became unknown. What lurked in the dark, what had been lost, what rules kept you safe without memory, there are no rules. And without rules, everything is possible. That's why your father whistled when he worked, why your grandmother told you never to sweep after sunset, why the bread was always broken, never sliced when guests were near. Not because the acts themselves had power, because they remembered something older than fear. Historians still debate whether medieval rituals were mostly habit or active belief, whether peasants like you truly thought they held power, or if they simply couldn't afford not to. You don't debate it, you live it. Each time you knot red thread around a sprig of rosemary, you're casting a vote in favor of structure, of order, of memory, of keeping things out. One morning, the crows return in full force. You've seen one or two here and there all winter, but now they arrive in dozens black blots against the pale sky, screaming and wheeling above the southern fence. You rush out boots, crunching frost, squinting at the commotion. They're circling something, a shape. It takes you a full minute to realize what it is. A cairn, but not like the others. This one is taller, waist-high, shaped not from pebbles, but from carefully stacked logs, 7 to be precise, laid in a spiral. At its center, a lantern, not lit, but unmistakably your father's. Your heart catches in your throat. You don't go near it. Not yet. Instead, you return home. Fetch your grandmother. She arrives with her stick, her pouch, and the soft scowl she wears when she knows what's coming. She doesn't speak as she walks the perimeter of the cairn, tapping each log once with her cane. Her lips move, but no sound emerges. You wait. Finally, she nods. It's not a warning. You frown. Then what? She points to the lantern. It's a marker. You approach slowly. The wood is solid, somewhat clean, bound at the corners with thin vines. Someone built this? Someone meant for you to find it? You reach for the lantern. It's warm, not from fire, but as if it had been held. Inside is a scrap of parchment folded tight. Your hands shake as you open it. Just 3 words. Keep the path. You exhale. You don't understand. Not fully. But it's enough. That night, you light the gift candle. The wax melts slowly, releasing a scent like pine and iron and something older, like dirt after a storm. You don't say your father's name. You don't have to. He's not gone. Not entirely. Maybe not even mostly. Just further away. For now. And the house your house holds. It stands through the night without whisper or sigh. You sleep deeply, and in your dream, the ash tree at the hill's edge glows faintly from within. And at its roots, your father's boots. Empty, but waiting. The cairn stays. No one touches it. Not you, not your mother, not even the village boys who in any other season would have kicked it over just to see what might crawl out. There's something about it, its symmetry, its stillness, the way the crows never quite land on it, that keeps hands away. It becomes part of the landscape, a landmark, a boundary, and for you, a promise. You begin visiting it each morning. Not for long, just long enough to straighten any wind-tilted log, relight the lantern. If it's gone out, though strangely, it never does, and whisper a few words into the air. You don't know if your father hears them. You don't need to. It's the speaking that matters. One morning, your brother joins you. He brings a smooth stone. He's painted with lines that loop like rivers. He places it at the base of the cairn without speaking and walks away. You don't stop him. That night, a storm blows through the village wind that yanks shutters open and howls between stones like it's trying to say something and can't quite remember the words. Rain lashes the roof. Thunder cracks the silence wide open. But the cairn stays untouched. And so does your home. You sit at the hearth candle, lit the feather spinning slowly in the draft. The handkerchief still hangs where you pinned it, above the shelf now curled and yellowing at the edges. Your grandmother visits again. She doesn't knock. She never does. She eyes the candle, the lantern, the stone tokens. Then she surprises you by sitting beside the hearth, not upright on her stool, but on the floor cross-legged like a child. She pulls from her pouch something new, a small circle of bone, carved, ancient. She places it at the center of the hearth altar. Found it in my bread bin, she says without looking at you. You blink. You think I think I was meant to pass it on, she says, her voice softer than usual. Not everything strange is threat. Sometimes it's instruction. She rests a hand on the floor just over the hearthstone. Her fingers tremble not from age, but something deeper. We're being taught, she says. All of us. You glance at the candle. Its flame splits in two, then merges again. You don't speak for a long time. Eventually she sleeps in your father's chair. Doesn't ask. Doesn't need to. And you again take the floor. Your brother dreams of a path lit by red stones. He tells you this in the morning. Where does it lead, you ask? He shrugs. He wouldn't say. Who? The man with the bell. You try to press further, but he just hums and goes to feed the goats. You follow him to the pen, but your thoughts stay with the dream. You know the red stones. Your father once spoke of them, glassy rocks, said to be cursed, found deep in the woods, usually in circles. He said they rang when struck like metal, and that you should never pick one up without leaving something behind. They're not for us, he said. They're just letting us borrow the land. Historians still argue whether such tales of borrowing and red stone paths were metaphors for shared space between worlds or just a warning about ancient burial grounds. Either way, no one builds near them now. That evening, you find your brother at the cairn again, arranging tiny twigs in patterns you don't recognize. He finishes and walks away without a word. You crouch and look closer. Not runes, not letters, just shapes, but they feel familiar. Later, after night has folded over the fields, like a wool blanket, you hear the wind again. Not angry this time, just passing through. And then the soft clang of a bell, 3 times, evenly spaced. You move to the window, open the shutter a crack. The lantern in the cairn is lit. You don't remember lighting it, but you don't question it either. That night, you write your father's name on the inside of your palm. Just once, just enough to remember how it looks, how it feels. Then you wash it off, not to forget, but to make space for remembering him again. Because that's the rhythm now. Fear, understanding, memory, respect, and always silence at the right time. The world beyond your door hasn't grown safer, but you've grown skilled. And when the candle's flame tilts toward the door, as if bowing in recognition, you whisper, "We see you." And for now, that's enough. The days stretch longer now, only by a little 10 minutes here, a pale smear of golden light there, but enough that you notice. Enough that the chickens begin laying again. Enough that your mother opens the shutters a little wider each morning. Even the crows seem less ominous, their cries sharper but less like warnings and more like announcements. Something is shifting. You visit the cairn less often now, not because you've forgotten, but because you don't have to. Its presence is steady, settled. It no longer asks for attention, it holds it. Like a grave that's finally been marked, like a wound that's not healed but no longer open. The lantern there burns every 3rd night now, like clockwork, never consecutive, never random. You keep track on a bit of slate by the hearth, marking each glow with a faint cross. The pattern, if there is one, hasn't yet revealed itself. Your brother tells you he no longer dreams of the man with the bell. Instead, he dreams of the goat trail up the hill behind the woods, the one no one uses because it leads nowhere, except in the dream it does. He says there are stepping stones that weren't there before, a rope tied to a tree, a soft chime in the wind. You nod. You don't say you've started hearing the chime while awake. Not loud, not near, but there. Your mother starts baking again. The smell of bread returns to the cottage in warm, yeasty clouds that almost cover the other scent. That trace of ash and pine and something cold that has never left since your father disappeared. You welcome the bread. Your grandmother comes one evening with a scrap of red cloth wrapped in birch bark. She doesn't explain, just sets it on the shelf above the hearth and says, "That should keep them honest." You don't ask who them is. You've learned not to name what doesn't name itself. That night, while stirring the fire, you find a feather tucked beneath the grate, different from the one on the shelf. This one is black, oil slick and whole, still warm. You hold it between 2 fingers, examining the quill. It pulses slightly, not like a heartbeat, more like breath. You place it next to the spiral stone. The shelf doesn't creak. The candle's flame doesn't flicker. The room doesn't chill. It accepts the offering. Or maybe it's an answer. Historians still argue whether medieval households were more spiritual or more scared, whether ritual was born of reverence or pure generational terror. You think it doesn't matter, because fear and reverence often wear the same face. The next day, your mother announces she's going to the market. You blink. She hasn't left the cottage in over a month. She ties her scarf, fills a basket with dried mushrooms, and tells you she'll return by dusk. She tells your brother to watch the goats, tells you to watch the threshold. You know she means the door. She leaves, and the house is quiet in her absence. Not anxious, just waiting, like it remembers her footsteps and is counting the hours until they return. You take her seat by the fire. Your brother hums as he tends to the animals. The sun creeps toward the edge of the fields, and then from the woods, a shape, walking the path you don't walk, not fast, not aimless, just approaching. You rise slowly, not to run, just to stand. The goats don't panic, so the wind doesn't rise. You wait. The shape resolves into a figure, a man, cloaked, hooded as carrying something. He stops at the edge of the fence, doesn't cross, just stands. The lantern in the cairn begins to glow. You step forward just once, and he lifts his head, but there's no face, only light, soft, gentle. It's not your father, but it isn't not him either. The figure sets something down just beyond the fence, then turns, walks back the way he came. No sound, no trail. You wait until he's gone. Then you cross the fence, the first time you've done so since before, and there resting on a folded cloth your father's cloak, clean, pressed, warm. Inside it his whistle, the one he wore around his neck when patrolling. Still strung, still whole. You bring it home, hang it beside the hearth. Don't touch it again, just look at it, often. And the house is very, very quiet that night. Not empty, just listening. You don't sleep that night, not because you're afraid, because you're watching. The whistle hangs from a wooden peg near the hearth, swaying gently in a breeze that doesn't exist. It doesn't chime, doesn't ring, but somehow it feels louder than sound. Your brother asks if he can hold it. You say no. You don't raise your voice, you don't need to. He nods like he already expected the answer. It's not a toy. It's not a relic. It's a tether. Your mother returns just after sunset, basket full of onions and root vegetables. Her cheeks are wind-bitten eyes glassy from travel. When she steps into the cottage and sees the cloak folded neatly resting in its old spot on the bench, she stops, not in shock, in recognition. She sets down the basket and walks to the hearth. One hand goes to her mouth. The other reaches out, just barely brushing the edge of the cloak's hem. Her fingers hover there a long time, then withdraw. She doesn't ask where it came from. She just says, "He's near," and that's all. You all sit together by the fire that night. The candle burns without complaint. The shelf holds steady. The red cloth from your grandmother, the spiral stone, the handkerchief, all untouched, all perfectly still, but you feel it. The presence. It's not pressing against the walls like it once did. It's in the walls now, settled, like a house guest who's unpacked and knows where the sugar is kept. And you're okay with that, because not all house guests mean harm. Some just return home in ways you didn't expect. Later that night, your grandmother arrives once again. You didn't send for her. She doesn't knock. She enters with purpose, carrying something wrapped in wax cloth. She kneels by the hearth. I dreamt of him, she says. You don't ask who. She unwraps the cloth. Inside is a small bowl, clay, cracked on one side but whole. She sets it near the hearth beside the candle. Then she adds a few drops of water, just enough to shimmer. He's asking for a place, she says, not to return, to remain. You understand? The whistle, the cloak, the cairn, they are not signs of his coming back. They are signs that he never fully left, that some part of him will memory spirit whatever name suits your need has rooted here and is watching. So you light a second candle, one for the living, one for the witness, and the room exhales slow and warm. Your brother sighs in his sleep. The goats shift in their pen outside but do not bleat. The wind rolls past your shuttered windows like a river respecting a bend, and for the first time you close your eyes without gripping the knife beneath your blanket. The knife stays there, but not out of fear, out of habit. In the morning there's a feather in the bowl, just one, white, small, perfect. Your grandmother nods when she sees it. Permission, she says. That day you build a small box out of cedar and ash. Inside you place the cloak folded 3 times. The whistle wrapped in cloth. The feather. A pebble from the cairn's base. A curl of bark with your brother's drawing etched on it. You place the box on the hearth shelf. No prayers, just presence. And that night the candle flame leans gently toward it, not flickering, not in warning, just in greeting. Historians still argue whether medieval people's rituals were attempts to tame the unknown or to befriend it. You no longer argue, you just share space. Your family eats dinner in calm silence. Your mother smiles softly when she sees the second candle. And outside, just beyond the fence, the cairn flickers once, then stills, as if nodding back. You dream of bells, not loud ones, not the clanging iron calls of church towers or the frenzied warnings of fire and wolves. These are soft, distant, like wind chimes made of bone and breath. They ring in 3s, then 2s, then 1s. You don't know what they mean. But in the dream, you nod as if you do. And when you wake, there's a dampness in the air that shouldn't be there. The fire is out, the hearth cold, the house is quiet, but not empty. The whistle still hangs by the peg. The box sits on the shelf undisturbed. The candles, both of them, burn low, but steady their twin flames, bending inward as though confiding. Your brother is already awake. He sits cross-legged near the door, staring at the bottom edge of the shutter. I heard footsteps, he says, not turning. But only one set. You wait for him to say more. He doesn't. So you say it for him. They didn't knock. He nods. You unbolt the door. The air outside is wet, thick with mist that curls low along the earth like it's reluctant to rise. There are no footprints in the mud, but there is a single stone set squarely on the threshold, flat, smooth, carved with 3 small lines, not runes, not words, just marks. You pick it up. It's warm, heavy. You set it on the shelf beside the bowl, and you leave the door open a little longer than usual, just enough for the house to breathe. You carry on with the day as though it's like any other. Your mother tends the root cellar. Your brother scolds the goats. You chop kindling, carefully avoiding the section of the woodpile where a beetle has burrowed a perfect spiral into the bark. You decide that piece will go into the box, not now, but eventually. Later, you walk to the cairn. It's been undisturbed. The lantern there is dark today, but the ashes beneath it are still warm. You kneel as you've begun to do and place your palm lightly against the top stone, not to pray, just to touch. You don't expect a sign, but you feel one. Not a whisper, not a chill, just a thought. Not yours, not yours either. We're still learning. You don't speak aloud. The moment doesn't ask for it. Instead, you reach into your pocket and place a small braid of red thread on the cairn's edge. A thank you, an understanding, a continuation. As you stand, you notice something to the east. Another cairn, farther into the woods, smaller, newer. You don't approach it, just not today. Instead, you turn home, and as you walk, the wind follows you, not ahead, not behind, beside you, level, present. Historians still argue whether the wind was seen as an omen in medieval lore or a message. They point to texts that say strong wind meant spirits were passing, that quiet wind meant they were watching. This wind makes no sound, but you understand it just fine. That night your grandmother brings bread, not to eat, to place on the hearth shelf, wrapped in a bit of parchment, marked with a symbol none of you recognize. She places it beside the whistle, and for the first time says his name aloud, your father's name. The air changes, not sharply, but enough that the candle flames pull back, as if surprised. Then they settle. Your mother repeats the name, then you, then your brother. You don't speak it like a memory. You speak it like an invitation, and the whistle rings, not from breath, not from hand, just rings. Once, then stillness. The room warms. The candles burn higher. Your brother lays his head on your shoulder and falls asleep there. Your mother knits in silence, but you see the tears at the corner of her eyes. Not from grief, from the return of something, not a person, not exactly, but a space where he once was now filled. And in the fire for just a moment, you see a boot print, faint, fading, walking away, not lost, just at peace. The days feel lighter now, not just in sunlight, though the sun does linger a little longer over the ridges each evening, but in weight, in pressure. The house creaks like a house again, not like a warning. The shadows have softened their edges. The night no longer presses in with such greedy hands. Even your brother has stopped humming his strange melodies in his sleep. Now he just snores, loudly, blissfully. Your mother hums, though, in the kitchen, over the stew pot, while hanging laundry. It's not a song you know, but it repeats. The same four-note rise and fall, gentle as a rocking chair. You suspect it's one your father once whistled, or perhaps she's making it up as she goes. Either way, it feels like the house has picked it up too. Sometimes the floorboards groan to the rhythm of it. Sometimes the wind at the window seems to carry it away and bring it back again. You've added new things to the hearth shelf. A ring of rusted iron found while digging near the well. A tooth goat probably wrapped in linen by your brother and placed without explanation. A piece of quartz, milky white, given to you by old Greta for holding ground. The shelf is full now. You rearrange it sometimes, not for aesthetics, but balance. The kind that isn't measured in inches or weight, but in feel. You've stopped thinking of it as an altar. It's a conversation, a way of keeping memory in motion. Historians might argue whether medieval households were shrines to superstition or sanctuaries of family legacy. But you think they were both, because sometimes those two are the same. Your grandmother has stopped visiting every week. She says, "You've got the rhythm now." She's not wrong. You mark the days without needing to carve them. You listen for the wind. You light the candle when the air feels thin, and you extinguish it when it burns too brightly. You haven't touched the whistle since it rang. You won't. Not until you know it's needed again. But you clean it gently once a week. Your brother spends more time near the south fence these days. He sits beneath the ash tree and watches the cairn. Sometimes he speaks softly. You don't ask what he's saying. He'll tell you if it matters. One afternoon, he returns with a stick carved into the shape of a small flute. Crude, barely playable. He places it beside the whistle on the hearth and says, "For when the next one watches." And you understand. It's not about the past anymore. It's about what comes next. That night, you leave the door unlatched for an hour. Nothing comes, no footprints, no frost, no gifts. But when you close it again, there's a feather tucked just inside the threshold. This one is gray, different again. Not a warning, a note, a message of continuity. You place it on the shelf. The candle flares once and settles. You sleep deeply that night. You dream of the cairns now, 2 now 3, spaced evenly through the forest, like stepping stones through fog. They pulse faintly like hearts. In your dream, your father walks between them, not lost, not trapped, just moving. And when he reaches the third, he turns not toward you, but toward the path ahead. And he nods, not goodbye, just acknowledgement. When you wake, the morning is golden with spring light. The air smells of thawing soil and old promises kept. Your brother is already outside playing his stick flute, poorly but proudly. You make tea and light a fresh candle, not for protection, just for company. And the house hums softly like it remembers the song. Spring arrives without ceremony. One morning you open the door and the frost is gone. Not faded, not clinging in the shadows, gone. In its place, soft mud, the kind that squelches under boots and remembers every step. The sky is high and pale, stretching wide over the village like freshly laundered linen. The ash tree by the south fence is budding. You've never seen it bloom before. Your brother notices too. He stands beneath it, with his arms crossed, staring up at the tiny green clusters pushing out of the bark like newborn thoughts. He says nothing, but later you find one of the buds pressed carefully between 2 pages of the village priest's discarded sermon notes. He doesn't explain why he has those either. You spend the morning cleaning the hearth, really cleaning, not just sweeping the ashes and shaking the soot from your tunic, but rearranging, rebalancing. The shelf has become crowded, and while none of the objects feel unwanted, the space has begun to feel cluttered. You don't want a museum. You want a memory that breathes. You leave the stone with 3 lines. You keep the candle stub, the spiral rock, the gray feather. You wrap the iron ring and the bark drawing in cloth and tuck them inside a wooden box you carve yourself. You place the box in the corner of the loft under your bed with lavender and salt, not to forget, but to let rest. That night the whistle glows faintly in the firelight, not like before, not magic, not command, just a sheen as if the fire sees it and remembers too. You sleep with your window shutter slightly open for the first time since since before, the air that flows in smells of turned earth and distance, and something else, like old wood, worn leather, cloak fabric after a long walk in the dark, the scent of your father. You don't cry. You just smile into your pillow and let sleep take you. Historians often say that belief systems decay over time, worn away by logic, by war, by forgetfulness. But they never talk about what comes after belief. The part where you don't need to believe. You just know. In the morning, the village is buzzing. 3 boys out gathering moss for the healer's poultices claim they saw a 4th cairn beyond the eastern path. They didn't go near, just saw it standing in a clearing that shouldn't exist. You know the place they mean. You walked that path once as a child and came home with your boots wet and your memory muddy. Your mother made you drink tea with sage and didn't speak to you until the next day. Now the cairns are growing in number, spreading outward, not enclosing, not threatening, extending, bridges instead of barriers. At midday, the priest arrives at your door. You haven't seen him up close in weeks. His robes are stained with travel. His eyes, lighter than you remember. He doesn't come in, just stands at the threshold and says, "I've stopped praying against it." You nod. There's no need for questions. He leaves a sprig of blessed rosemary on your doorstep and walks away without turning back. You dry the rosemary and place it in the bowl. The fire pops. That night the wind is full of birdsong. Too early perhaps, but welcome. It weaves through the thatch and presses gently against the shutter. You open it wide. No fear, no invitation, just space. And the house breathes in, and you with it. There's a rhythm to things now. Not the fearful pattern of closed shutters and whispered prayers, but a different kind of beat one that pulses beneath daily life like the low thrum of distant drums. You feel it in the way people walk a little slower, speak a little softer, like everyone is listening for something, but not in fear, in reverence, in alignment. You walk past old Greta's cottage and see she's begun rearranging her herbs into spirals. Not alphabetical, not by season, just spirals. You ask her why. She says, because they asked. You don't ask who they are. That word doesn't mean what it used to. In the market, someone's left bundles of twigs tied with red thread on the grain sacks. No one claims them. No one takes them down. The priest blesses them anyway. You return home with a fresh bar of soap and a small vial of honey. Simple things, but you place the honey on the hearth shelf anyway. It feels right. That night, you light both candles. They burn in sync, same height, same flicker. The wind picks up curling through the thatch with that old familiar hiss, but this time it's a song, not a warning. It rises and falls like breath, like speech without words. You lean your head against the wall and close your eyes. You think you hear your father humming, not near, not far, just near enough. Your brother spends more time with the goats again. He's carving now little totems of wood animals with too many eyes trees, with faces stones with feet. They're not eerie somehow. They're curious, joyful. One morning you find a few of them placed at the base of the ash tree. You don't ask if he put them there. You don't ask if he saw something. You just add one of your own, a crude carving of a lantern, and press it into the soil like a seed. That evening, your mother bakes 2 loaves. She leaves one on the windowsill, not as a bribe, as a thank you. In the middle of the night, the whistle rings again. One soft note. No breeze, no touch, just the sound, and then silence. You don't wake your mother. You don't need to. You rise, wrap your shawl around your shoulders, and walk barefoot to the hearth. The stone is warm under your feet. You place another candle on the shelf, a third, for balance. You light it. The other two lean in. Historians might call it psychological, your need to create order in a world that once spun out of control. You call it listening. And when the candle flames dance in time to an unseen rhythm, you don't question it. You just let them move. Your grandmother comes at dawn. She brings nothing, says little. She sits at the hearth, looks at the third candle, and smiles. Now you're keeping the house, she says. Not guarding, keeping. You nod. She takes your brother outside, and together they dig a circle at the edge of the garden. They don't explain why. When you look later, the circle has been filled with small stones, some carved, some not. It feels like a clock that tells no time. That night, for the first time since the night your father disappeared, you dream of your house, but not the way it is, the way it will be, filled with warmth, with voices, with remembering. There are candles on every shelf, feathers hung like curtains, bread cooling in the window, a goat asleep in the doorway, and through the open door, a figure, not quite man, not quite shadow, holding a staff, carrying no weight. And though the dream fades before he speaks, you wake with a single word on your lips, welcome. You start noticing the colors, not the ones in your dreams. Those have always been too vivid, too strange, but the ones in the waking world. The moss is greener, the sky more layered. Even the dirt beneath your fingernails carries hints of ochre and slate and copper you never took time to see before. Maybe it's spring. Maybe it's something else. The cairns beyond the village have grown again. There are 6 now. One of the boys counted them on a dare, left a slice of apple on the 6th, and came home with a nosebleed and no memory of where he'd been for the last 2 hours. No one scolds him. Some things don't require punishment, just space, just learning. That night, your brother places a drawing on the hearth shelf. It's a rough sketch charcoal on parchment, but you recognize the figure instantly, your father, or someone shaped like him, tall, hooded, lantern in hand. Behind him, 6 cairns, each drawn like small mountains. Beneath them, spirals. He doesn't explain the drawing. He doesn't need to. You add a pinch of salt to the bowl and whisper your father's name, not like a prayer this time, but like a greeting. The candles nod, 3 flames swaying gently inward, like they've been listening this whole time and are pleased you finally spoke up. You sweep the floor slowly that evening, not for cleanliness, for clarity. Your grandmother says sweeping is a conversation, every stroke a word, every pile of dust a sentence you get to rewrite. She watches you do it, nods when you finish. You're almost ready, she says. You blink, for what she doesn't answer. But the wind does. It pushes softly through the window and rings the chimes hanging by the doorway. You forgot you even put those up goat bones, strung with copper thread. You didn't make them. Your brother did. He said they keep the curious spirits amused. They laugh, he said, if the wind catches some just right. Tonight it does, and the laugh is quiet, but real. Historians still argue whether these household customs had any actual magic, or if they simply gave frightened people something to hold. But magic, you've decided, is just memory with manners, and fear, when respected, can become wisdom. You open the door that night, not all the way, just a crack, long enough for the house to share its breath with the world. And you stand there with your hand on the frame, your eyes on the path where the lantern once burned. You say thank you, not for what's been given, for what's been left behind. Then you close the door, gently. As you return to the hearth, you notice something odd. The third candle, the one you added for balance, has melted into a perfect spiral. The wax hardened like a coiled snake, like a path winding toward the center of something not quite seen. Your brother points to it, says, "That means he's closer." You ask to what? To remembering, he says. You don't ask who he is. You don't ask who he's remembering. You just nod. And that night, when the fire dies down and the room is lit only by the flicker of the candles and the soft breath of the coals, you see a shape in the corner of your eye. Not solid, not shadow, just presence. And in your heart, without panic, you say, "We are not afraid." And the room agrees. With creaks, with warmth, with silence. And somewhere beyond the walls, something old nods its head and continues walking. You wake to birdsong again, not the skittering notes of sparrows or the sharp complaint of crows, but something richer, slower. A low, whistling call you don't recognize drifting in through the shutter like someone humming down a hallway. You lie still, listening. It repeats. Not exactly the same, just enough to make you wonder if it's repeating you. You dress quietly. Your brother is still asleep, curled around the hearth, like a cat in the warmest patch of stone. The candles have burned down to soft wax puddles, their wicks curled like closing fingers. You leave them be. Outside, the mist hugs the ground. It's the kind that clings low, thigh-high maybe, and swirls slowly around the ankles, like it wants to lead you somewhere. You follow it. Past the ash tree, past the cairn, past the line where you usually stop. The seventh cairn stands in a clearing that wasn't here yesterday. You're sure of it. The stones are dark, wet, slick as if freshly laid, but there's moss between them, old moss. A crow sits atop the tallest one and tilts its head at you without cawing. You step closer, not too close, just enough to see what's been placed at the center. A bell, small, copper, tarnished green at the edges. You don't touch it. You kneel slowly and press your hand to the ground instead. It's warm. The earth here remembers something. You close your eyes and breathe. You don't speak. You just listen. And you hear footsteps, not in the clearing, inside you, like the echo of someone who once walked where you now kneel. Someone whose feet knew this soil. Someone whose lantern you still keep by the hearth. You open your eyes and say nothing. You walk back to the house. At the door, you find a tuft of fur. Dark, coarse, familiar. You add it to the box in the loft without a word. That night, your grandmother arrives with her walking stick, a basket of black root, and an announcement, "It's time." You blink. For what she points to the hearth shelf, to finish what you've been building. You watch her unpack the basket, a small bundle of twine, a flat stone with a hole through it, and a sprig of bitter leaf. She places each item in your hands, one by one, then waits. You know what to do. You don't know how you know, but you do. You bind the twine around the stone, tuck the bitter leaf inside, set the bundle beneath the whistle, Relight the first candle. Your brother joins without being asked. He lights the second. Your mother enters. She brings the folded cloak and places it on the bench once more. The fire flares not high, not loud, just enough to let you know it's listening. And then you all sit. You don't speak. You let the room breathe. Let the shadows settle. Let the shelf glow like a window into something larger. And as the hour grows late, the bell outside rings. Once, just once, clear as water in a metal bowl. You stand, you open the door, but no one is there. Only footprints, yours from earlier, but now facing toward the house, not away. Like someone else walked them in return. You smile, close the door, return to the hearth, and add a new piece to the shelf, a scrap of bark with your name carved into it. Not for you, for whoever comes next. Because now the house remembers, and so do you. The thaw comes in earnest. Snowmelt trickles from rooftops and gathers in the seams between cobbles. The air smells of earth again, real earth, not frozen dirt, but living soil, rich and black and full of small invisible movements. You sweep the threshold twice a day now, not because of dust, because of meaning. Your grandmother says doorways are the mouth of a house. What enters and what leaves must be remembered. The cairns remain. 7 of them now, though someone swears they glimpsed an 8th, farther east, half swallowed by brambles. You don't investigate. You don't need to. You've learned that not everything ancient wants to be found, but some things want to witness, and that's what the cairns feel like now. Eyes, not prying, not judging, just keeping watch. Your brother begins marking the hearth wall in chalk little lines clustered in groups of 3. You ask what they mean. He shrugs. I think they're days. Days until what I don't know yet. That seems to satisfy him. And strangely, it satisfies you too. The hearth shelf grows again, not with objects, but with intent. The items are the same, the candle stub, the whistle, the gray feather, the smooth-marked stone. But they feel more focused now, like notes in a melody finally resolving into a song you didn't know you were singing. You light the candle without ceremony. It doesn't flare, it settles, and the house settles with it. You begin noticing how much the house listens, not metaphorically. Actually, it creaks when you lie, warms when you speak kindly, hums just slightly when you speak your father's name. That name has changed meaning now. It's not grief, it's guidance. Your mother has stopped plaiting her hair every morning. Instead, she leaves it loose the same way she wore it when your father first courted her in the old days before you were born. You say nothing, but your brother notices. He hums a tune she used to sing. She smiles. That night a fox is seen in the village, sleek, red, unafraid. It walks between the cottages as if it lives there, doesn't disturb the chickens, doesn't run, just looks. You open your door, it glances at you once, and continues on. Your grandmother, upon hearing this, simply nods. They're checking in, she says. Who you ask? All of them. She doesn't elaborate. She doesn't need to. You leave a sliver of bread at the edge of the garden that evening. Not on the hearth, not on the windowsill, just near the soil. The earth accepts it. You know because the next morning, a small cairn no taller than a child's hand sits where the bread once lay, and in its center, a spiral, pressed into the dirt with a fingertip. You press your own finger into it, not to erase, to echo. That night, your brother speaks in his sleep again, but this time it's not names or strange rhymes. It's a question, soft, clear. When do we begin walking? You don't wake him. You just listen. And the wind in the chimney seems to answer soon. You start preparing without realizing it. Not packing, not saying goodbyes, but shifting. Making the house ready for a different rhythm, a different breath. You move the hearth shelf to the eastern wall where the light comes first in the morning. It's subtle, but you feel the change immediately. The items seem more alert, as if turning towards something. Your grandmother helps without being asked. She brings beeswax to reseal the window frames, a new pouch of salt, a comb made from bone that she sets beside the whistle. She says, "If you go, let the house remember how to comb its hair." You don't ask what that means, so you just nod. The cairns haven't moved, but the air around them has. You feel it, like a road slowly surfacing from under snow, like a hand reaching out from the dark, not to grab, but to guide. And the dreams return. You see the path, narrow winding, flanked by spirals etched into trees and stones alike, each one glowing faintly as you pass. In the dream, you're not alone. Your brother is beside you, and someone else walks ahead, lantern in hand step, sure back familiar. Not hurrying, just leading. You wake with dirt beneath your fingernails. You hadn't left the bed. That morning, your brother says we should go soon. You ask where he shrugs, where he's waiting. Your mother hears and doesn't object. She just packs a satchel, bread, salt, 3 candles, the handkerchief. She adds the bell, says for announcing arrival. Your grandmother braids red thread through the straps. You add the feather. No one speaks of the cairns. But when you pass them on your way to the ash tree that evening, you feel them pulse gently underfoot, like footsteps echoing through stone. You kneel at the base of the ash and place your palm to its trunk. It's warm. You whisper, "We're ready." And the wind sighs through the branches like approval. Historians still debate whether pilgrimage in medieval life was always sacred or sometimes necessary in other ways that had nothing to do with relics or penance. You don't think this is a pilgrimage. You think it's completion. The house is quiet that night, but not still. It's packing too. The shadows lean in kindly. The fire burns low and long, like it knows this is one of its last dances with you. You tuck the whistle in your brother's satchel. You keep the stone. You don't say goodbye to the house. You just pause before the door. You turn. You whisper, "Keep what you've learned." And the shelf flickers in response. You step outside. Your brother is already ahead. Your mother follows. And the moon is full. The cairns glow faintly as you pass. The 7th one has a feather atop it now. Not yours, a gift. And as you walk the path that wasn't there yesterday, unfurls in front of you, not fast, not bright, just enough. And somewhere ahead, a bell rings. Once. The path doesn't lead where you thought it would. It never does. It bends, loops, doubles back. At one point, it passes so close to your village that you hear the sound of the smith's hammer in the distance. But the trees are different now. Taller, listening more intently. Your brother hums as he walks. He's not afraid, not even curious. He seems to remember this place, like it was waiting for him. Your mother walks behind you, Her steps are slow, steady, not hesitant, measured. She knows that every footprint now has meaning, that this is not a walk through the woods, it's a walk with them. You reach the 8th cairn by dusk. It stands in a clearing soaked in gold. You don't know where the light comes from. There's no sun, not directly, but everything glows like memory made visible. The cairn here is different, rounder, older, covered in moss that pulses faintly beneath your fingers when you touch it, and resting at its base, a lantern. Not your father's, yours. You don't remember making it, don't remember carrying it, but you know it's yours the way you know the shape of your own hands in the dark. You lift it, it's warm, unlit, but ready. You set it on the cairn and sit beside it. Your brother does the same. Your mother kneels behind you both and places her hand on your shoulders. You speak nothing, because there's nothing to ask. The wind carries words enough. The trees do not whisper. They breathe, long, deep breaths, the kind taken before a name is spoken. Historians might call this communion, might write about it in their quiet rooms with ink and caution. They might say you had a vision, a shared psychosis, a village superstition grown legs and wandered into collective hallucination. Let them. You are not writing history. You are remembering it. Night comes, not fast, not heavy. It lowers gently like a blanket pulled over a dreaming child. You light the lantern. It takes flame instantly, not from sparks, from recognition. The cairn glows, and around the clearing, the other cairns now visible in all directions glow too. 9, 10, 12, so many, all lit, and then you see him, not clearly, not in form, in outline, a figure of stillness among the swaying. No face, no cloak, just presence, like the wind learned to walk. Your brother raises his hand in greeting. You place your palm over your heart. Your mother whispers a word you've never heard before, but somehow understand. The figure bows, then steps back, and as it fades into the light between trees, the lanterns do not go out. They brighten, just enough to mark the trail, just enough to show the way. You sleep in the clearing, no tent, no fire, just the moss, the breath of the trees, the hum of old memories singing itself back into shape. And in your dream, the house still stands, still warm, still listening. But now its door is open, and others are entering, carefully, respectfully, bringing with them whispers and offerings and stories from other paths. The house remembers them all, because you taught it how. And in the firelight of your dream, the shelf is full of names, of feathers, of lanterns, of peace. Morning breaks, like water poured gently over stone. No sunrise, no blinding gold. Just a slow lightening of the mist, a deepening of shadows that don't recede, but soften like old fears forgiven. You wake first. The lantern at the base of the cairn is still glowing. Not bright, just enough. Its flame moves like it's breathing with you, as if the night taught it your rhythm and it decided to keep going. Your brother is curled nearby, one hand resting on the earth, fingers twitching in his sleep like he's dreaming of planting something. Your mother is already sitting up, braiding her hair with a calm you haven't seen in months. She meets your gaze and nods. You know what it means. You rise together. No words, no meals. The journey has already begun, and now it must continue. You don't look back at the 8th cairn. It doesn't need farewells. Cairns don't forget. The forest now is different, not darker, not even denser, just more itself. Each tree feels taller, each path more defined by its own will than your steps. You no longer wonder where you're going, you simply move. At midday, you come upon a fork, no signposts, no obvious right or wrong. But your brother points left, and your mother takes right. They both look to you. You don't hesitate. You take the center, and the path parts for you, not with rustling or ceremony, but with welcome, a breeze like an open door. Your steps are lighter now. The air smells of stone and rain and something beneath it all, something like time. Not time passing, time arriving. At the next clearing, there's a cairn made of bone, small, carefully arranged, not morbid, intentional. Beside it, a thread of cloth tied around a thorn branch. You don't touch it, you kneel, you place the spiral stone from your pouch at its base. You whisper, "We remember," and the wind shivers. Your mother adds her handkerchief. Your brother draws a circle in the dust, and you walk on. That night, no fire is needed. The lantern glows, and around you others join it, little glimmers between trees, as if the woods themselves are lighting their own tiny hearths in recognition. You eat bread in silence, break it into thirds, leave one on a flat stone at the edge of the clearing, not to feed anything, to honor everything. When you sleep, you dream of the house again. This time, it's full of people, some you know, some you don't. They speak in languages you've never learned, yet you understand every word. They leave bundles on the shelf. They sweep the floor. One child ties red thread around the table leg. A figure watches from the doorway. You recognize the shape. The lantern in its hand glows with the same rhythm as your own breath. You wake with your hand outstretched, and when you open your eyes, the clearing is filled with mist, but the cairn is glowing, and in the soft dirt beside it, a footprint, yours and one more, beside it, not heavier, not smaller, just parallel, and fading slowly with the morning. You smile, you do not follow it, you walk beside it. By the 30th day, you understand that the journey is not about reaching a place. It's about returning changed. The forest never ends, not in the way roads do. It opens and closes, shifts and circles, but you're no longer moving through it. You're part of it now. Your breath matches its breath. Your steps trace the memory of paths older than names. You no longer count the cairns. They're everywhere, some tall, some flat, some glowing, some silent, some barely distinguishable from the stones scattered in creek beds or pressed into moss. But you feel them. Everyone. They feel you too. Or your brother walks ahead now, leading more often than following. Sometimes he stops and lays a finger on a tree's bark or hums to a root sticking up from the soil. He's speaking with the woods in a language that requires no tongue. Your mother hums again, that same tune she once sang over stew pots and folded linen. But now it seems to guide the wind. The air moves with her voice, soft, not startled, listening. You find yourself smiling more, not because everything is joyful, but because everything is right. One morning, you find a mirror pool still and wide, ringed with stones etched in spiral patterns. You kneel beside it and see yourself. Older, softer, eyes not haunted but holding. Behind your reflection stands the outline of a figure. You don't turn. You don't need to. It's not your father, but it carries the shape of what you remember him being. and it's walking with you. Later that day, you arrive at a hill. The trail ends not abruptly but fully. The forest opens like arms. The sky yawns above, and at the crest of the hill is a single cairn, larger than the rest, twice your height, wrapped in vines. At its base, a space has been cleared, not dug, prepared. You know what to do. You set the lantern down. Your brother adds the flute he carved. Your mother presses the folded cloak against the stones. And you reach into your satchel and pull out the stone with 3 lines. You press it into the cairn. It sinks in like it belongs there, like it was always missing. The cairn warms beneath your palm and hums, not sound, not music, memory, a living archive. It takes everything you've given and keeps it. You step back. The wind stills. The birds hush. Even the trees seem to lean in. You raise your hand not in farewell, in thanks, and the light in the lantern flickers once, then fades, not out, inward. The cairn absorbs it and glows. And as the sun begins to set behind you, casting long golden rays across the stones, you sit at the base of the cairn. You close your eyes. You breathe. And you know the fear of night was never about darkness. It was about forgetting what the dark remembers. Now you remember. You carry the forest inside you, and it in turn carries you. Final 300 words. And now, as the forest dims and the final light slips behind the edge of the world, your breath slows. The wind hushes, the trees quiet. Even the birds tuck their heads beneath their wings. You are still. The cairns, each one pulsing faintly across the landscape, are no longer just markers of fear or mourning. They are memory. They are presence. They are home. The lantern that once burned with your father's breath now sleeps within the stones carried forward, not in flame but in you. The night is not silent, but it is gentle. And though the dark returns, because it always must, you are not afraid. You've walked through it. You've spoken with it, and it has spoken back. So as you lie down beneath the open sky, moss beneath your hands, breath slowing with the rhythm of the earth, you feel it at last. The peace of being remembered. The power of remembering in return. No more footsteps to follow. No more questions to ask. Just this moment. Just this quiet. Just this knowing you are not alone. You never were, not really. The hearth still glows behind you. The forest still breathes beside you. And the path will always find you again whenever you're ready. Sleep now, traveler. The watch is being kept. Word count 300.